Okay, so we've got this incredibly wonderful scene here that I whipped up. And basically it's a little plane and a runway, and now we're going to get the plane to take off. So one other way of animating is that instead of creating keyframes for position and rotation, you can attach an object to a curve. In this case, this is just a CV curve that I drew out with the CV curve tool, and this will form the path that they will take. So all you need to do is select the object that you want to move along the path, and then shift select the path. And then under animate, you can go to motion path and attach to motion path. And I'm going to open up the option box, reset the settings here. So you can set a time range. In this case, I'm going to start it at frame 1. Actually, let's start it at frame 5. And the end time, I'm going to start, well, let's see how long is it going to take. 1, 2, 3 seconds, so maybe frame 95. It's important to make sure which axis you're going to set to be the front and the up, because as the if you've got follow set on the motion path, what that means is that if the path changes direction, your object is going to change its rotation to follow that path, and we'll see what that means. So because we want the front of the object traveling sort of in the same direction that it's moving. So in this case, our little plane object, this is the front here, and so this is in the Z direction, we can see. So we want to make sure that the front axis is set to Z, and up is in Y, so that's good. And we're going to hit attach. You can see that this object snaps to the beginning of the curve, and it's oriented in the correct direction. And if we just play the animation, off we go. So that is super simple and straightforward. Now there's a few options and parameters that we can look at. There's a new node attached to the plane called motion path. A node in the attribute editor that gives us access to some of these controls. So if we realize that we've put this on backwards, we could inverse the front if it was in the negative Z direction. We could also inverse the up, and that's just going to flip it upside down. And you can also change the front axis. And you can see why it's important to set the front axis, because now we've got the plane sort of sliding sideways. If we turned off follow and went back to the beginning, then you can see that it's not changing direction to respect the path. So we're going to set follow, and we're going to set the front axis to VZ again. You can also, if you're slightly off of an exact axis, you can also set a little bit of change to the axis with this front twist and side twist, so that you have exactly what you need in terms of the facing orientation, but I'll set that all back to 0. There's an attribute called bank, and it kind of does exactly what you'd expect. As it goes, it's a little bit hard to see, but as the plane moves, it banks to follow the curve. So I'm going to change this bank scale to something like 5, and now we can see a little bit more obviously the airplane is banking as it goes around the curve. That would be appropriate for a plane. It might not be appropriate for other objects along a motion path. It depends on what you're doing. And we could even crank that way up. You can see that it's a little bit jittery there, and that's because if you look at the top view, the path straightens out, and so that might be something that you would want to manually kind of tweak the rotation of if you wanted that a bit smoother. Other things that we can do, obviously this kind of just set us the beginning and the end, but if we wanted to set a specific point on the path, let's say we want the airplane to start off a little bit slower, and it's only at about frame 40 that it actually takes off. So if we go to frame 40, we can go animate motion paths and set motion path key. And what that does is it sets a new key, and we can see there's a little number there, 40, that says at frame 40 the plane is at this point. But if at frame 40 we wanted the plane back on the runway still, we could go, of course, into our animation editor, graph editor, and we can see that we've got this curve called motion path. And this is going from frame 5 to frame 95, and here's our frame 40. So we could select that, and then with the with the move tool, and then shift right mouse button, we can drag that back. Actually, this is a little bit backwards. So what I wanted is that at this, so I did it a little bit backwards. So what this means is that at this position, let's say we want this position to take place at frame, at frame 60. So that's stretching out and slowing down the first part of the curve. And so then if we go back and reselect this, you can see that this updates to frame 60. So what I should have done is I should have gone to where it takes off and say, I'm just going to undo all of that. Set key. Okay. So now we're back to our just 2 keys. So at this point, if I wanted to say, I want the airplane to take off at frame 40. So I could just go to the point where it actually takes off and say, okay, it's about that point there. And then again, I can set the key. And now we've got the key at the right position, the right value, but it's at the wrong time. And so then we just set the key and move it forward until we get to frame 40. And where's frame 40? There's frame 40. So we just move it forward. And now we have, it still says 31, but if we select it, that'll update to 40. So now we've got the plane taking off at frame 40. So again, what we did was we put the object in the position we want at a specific time, and then we set a key on that, and then move the key to the right time. Of course, this curve is still active, and so if we wanted to, we could change the curve. But what you notice is that this kind of pulls the plane along because it's increasing the length of the curve. So the plane is going to do more travel because the curve is longer, and so the keys are going to be a little bit more spaced out in terms of the length, and it's going to move faster. The tangents still are relevant, so by default this has been set to an auto, but if we wanted it, and so it has some ease in and ease out sort of built in because this is a flat, but if we wanted to set that linear, what that would mean would be that the plane, when it gets to the end, it has kind of has a dead stop because there's no ease in, ease out. So again, look at your tangents and figure out what you want in terms of the how the motion changes, whether there's any ease in or ease out. So if we wanted that back, we could go in here and set that to flat, and then so we've got a nice ease in.